But who better than me?
Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Base the Kid. As always, like and subscribe, share with a friend, colleague, family member, enemy, associate, any other variable within that range. I greatly appreciate any and all comments, views, opinions. Like, I take them all on board, I read them all, I respond to them. So yeah, it was a quiet week of boxing since the Virgil Ortiz and Michael McKinson fight didn't take place. That being said, I didn't actually watch a lot of the boxing that was on this weekend, but I do have some of the results. So without further ado, let me get into that and then a couple other topics just to finish off. Okay, so I didn't actually get a chance to watch the Pro Bellum card. I'm gonna try and get through that at some point this week, especially probably before Tuesday, as it will come up on the breakdown. That being said, I do know that Regis Prograis pretty much dominated Tyrone McKenna for 6 rounds. I think he dropped him in the second, did his thing. I mean, you know, he was fighting an opponent that was levels below him, so it wasn't to be unexpected, if I'm totally honest. He does need to step up now, back to the upper echelons of the division, but I do think that was supposed to be some kind of eliminator for the WBC title. So as soon as Josh Taylor vacates that, I think that does put Regis in prime position to fight for it. Who knows, he might even end up fighting Jack Catterall for that belt. So that would be a decent little scrap. I'd definitely be interested in that. What else did we have on that card? Oh yeah, He Who Shall Not Be Named apparently won, what was it, 12-round unanimous decision as normal. From what I've heard, he had a very sort of pressure fighter, come forward, crude opponent. What was his name? Wahim or Wazim, something like that. I mean, yeah, well, his next fight should hopefully be, you know, Martinez. So let's see where we get with that one. That would be good to sort of see him get a real stiff test based on what he has been fighting previously. I saw part of the DAZN card. I didn't actually get to see Ramla Ali's fight on the undercard. However, I did find out that she finally got her first recorded stoppage as a pro, which is good for her. Takes her now to 5-0 with 1 KO. And the lady that she was fighting, which had a record I think of 5-6-2, had never been knocked out and never knocked out anyone previously, so that's good for her. I know that she's working with Manny Robles at the moment. He's a sort of very sound, very aggressive coach, all about sort of sitting down on the shots, planting the feet when in safe positions to do so, working behind the jab while working to the body. So I'll have to check back on that fight, but definitely congrats to her, as it's long overdue, and she's clearly now looking like properly transitioning from that amateur point scoring type style to the pro style of, you know, sort of more less is more if you do it correctly, as they say. So yeah, congrats to her. I saw Melakuziev, he came back. I don't remember the name of the opponent, but he stopped him in the second round with a very, very vicious body shot, and subsequently said that he wants the rematch with Gabe Rosado. He said that once he gets a belt, Rosado will be the first person he calls out and he'll offer him a title shot. That'll be very interesting. I can imagine Gabe will happily take that, but I definitely know he won't fight him again without something being on the line. But no, it was a good showing but he was a lot more cautious and gun shy than he has been previously. Now I know obviously that can happen and you don't want to get clipped, but he virtually threw almost nothing in the first round, so you can kind of see that in his mind he's maybe being a bit too cautious, and sometimes that can be just as bad as being over eager. So you know, let's see how that works out long term. But I'm sure sort of once he gets 1 or 2 more kind of those fights under his belt, he'll get his confidence back and he'll go back to sort of being that pressuring bully type fighter that he was before, maybe just a bit more defensively responsible. So we'll see. The McKinson fight, I cannot remember the name of the guy that he was fighting, but the guy was a lightweight that basically came in nearer, closer to his natural weight, sort of a 147. It was 2 southpaws, and it's weird because from what I had heard, McKinson turned down a bunch of opponents because they were southpaws, and he'd been training for orthodox fighters for the entire duration of camp. So how they then managed to land on another southpaw was very odd to me. I watched the majority of the fight, but I can't lie, it wasn't very engaging whatsoever from either person. But from what I saw of it, I mean, McKinson was getting beat to the jab, was getting beat to the punch quite a bit. Ultimately, I'm pretty sure that in the rounds I didn't watch, it might have been a bit different, or he might have just done enough in those rounds to sort of get the overall decision. I'm probably again going to have to watch that before the show on Tuesday, just to kind of, you know, sort of refresh and, you know, probably properly analyze the fight itself. But yeah, it wasn't a very pleasant one to watch. Some bouts are all about sort of that tactical masterclass. It was just very boring, and I'm glad it got downgraded from the main event. Speaking of which, it was Alexis Rocha against Blair the Flair Cobbs. Now, Blair the Flair is a very entertaining character outside of the ring. Obviously he studies WWE very much. He's into sort of his theatrics. He's a big fan of Ric Flair, as we, you know, can kind of work out from the name. And everything about him is like, he's one of those guys, if he had more talent than he actually does, he would probably be a big crossover star, because he's just kind of got that natural personality to gravitate towards just a casual market. That being said, he doesn't have more talent. He's probably, I'd give him probably like a C+ type fighter. Like, he's at a certain level, he's gonna look good. But when you put him up against someone who can read what he's doing and make adjustments, he's gonna get found wanting. But what I will give him some credit for, obviously the fight he was in, I'm assuming that he probably wasn't training southpaw as much as he should have been, because he was getting hit with southpaw shots quite often in that fight, whereby you would think as a southpaw, even though you don't come up against them a lot of times, you would know what shots they're going to throw to try and be able to counter. He was moving quite well throughout the majority of the fight. He was very competitive. Like, it was a very entertaining fight. Like, so I don't want to say like, oh, it was a blowout, but Rocha definitely commanded the fight. We'll put it that way. He was definitely the aggressor. He definitely understood where to place his shots. Occasionally he got hit with something substantial, but for the most part none of it seemed to really bother him. Cobbs was like sort of moving a bit excessively at times, so you might even say whether that was nervous energy or whether he was just saying movement's the only way I'm going to be able to get in and out on this guy. But it was an entertaining fight, especially sort of round 5 was highly entertaining. I think round 3 was a good one, and obviously rounds 8 and round 9. And to give Blair Cobbs his props, like, he took a beating, but he stayed competitive, he stayed swinging. Like, he never just sort of wilted. The ref did jump in, but even when the ref jumped in, he was still sort of trying to trade back. You know, he ended up even throwing some mild body shots to the ref, I think, as the ref jumped in on him. So he was always trying. His face wasn't like badly banged up or marked up or anything, so you know, he was pretty good at riding a lot of the shots. He's got some good lateral movement up top, so if he was able to refine the actual skills himself, I reckon he could do a bit better than what he did on the weekend. But that being said, I think he is 33, so it's like, how much how much more are you really going to improve? But I want to see him again, just for the theatrics. Like I said, I like Blair the Flair Cobb. He's like in the boxing world, for me, he's a bit of a guilty pleasure. So, you know, I like watching his yeah, his build-ups to the fights and whatnot. So you know, commiserations to him, he did well. Alexis Rocha, he said that he wants to fight McKinson in his next fight. And obviously McKinson got in the ring and they spoke, but he said he wants to fight Conor Benn as well if he can get the Conor Benn fight. I don't think Eddie's going to put Conor in that one, but hey, I mean, I'd like to see it personally. He definitely has proved that he's, you know, that he would be stern competition. He's got the you know, sort of the Latino background, and he's got the fan base for them. And then you've obviously got Conor, who's got sort of the British public, and he also speaks Spanish. I mean, look, we can have a little transatlantic beef brewing there if Eddie will let him go, but I doubt he would. That being said, it was a really good fight to end the DAZN show. Wasn't the one we wanted, but you know, what can you do? Switching over to the Top Rank card. Now this one, I didn't see any of it, unfortunately, apart from the main event. I actually have to go back and watch several of the undercard fights. From what I heard, there's some really good prospects on the undercard. I know Xander Zayas was on there. I'm not sure the names of some of the other guys, but apparently there's some people in there that I need to watch and do some research on. So I'll be doing that over the next week or so. But to talk about the main event, Edgar Berlanga. So we now can see exactly what his limitations are as a fighter. When he had people just standing in front of him and, you know, not being able to defend themselves, yeah, first round knockouts, like it made a lot of sense. Ever since the competition has stepped up marginally, it hasn't even been a huge step up. Like the knockouts have stopped, everything's getting the distance, he's getting dropped by people that he shouldn't be getting dropped by. And in this fight, which I'll have to talk about a lot more on the breakdown, but it was like any movement at all and he can't function. Like Steve Rolls was basically, he was on his bike a lot of the time, acting as a pure boxer, sticking on the outside, sort of throwing out jab stabs to the body primarily. First couple of rounds, he was reminding me a bit of like how Michael Hunter would normally fight, where he sort of steps in behind that jab to the gut, then pushes out again and sort of comes back in doing the same thing. It was very, to me, it was very sort of reminiscent of that, but he was basically on his bike the whole time, not setting his feet, not allowing Berlanga to sort of get his feet planted to throw his heavy shots. Berlanga wasn't setting anything up behind the jab. He wasn't setting traps even. Everything was about just trying to get to that right hand, and it wasn't clearly working. So I don't know why he didn't try and switch up that target. He was plodding forward with a high guard, acting like a pressure fighter, but without the defensive nuances that you need to pressure someone effectively. Like it definitely wasn't a Canelo style pressuring or even a Golovkin of old type stalking. It was very sort of labored and, you know, languishing. It wasn't a great performance from him. Steve Rolls is a 160 pounder, went up to 168 and pretty much didn't really get hurt all fight, to be fair. One thing he was doing, he was actually he was side on, almost like he was almost fully side on for the majority of the fight, which meant that a lot of the time Berlanga was trying to land those straight shots, they were just zipping past his head, because there just wasn't enough of a target for Berlanga to hit. The scorecards was 97-93 twice and 96-94 to Berlanga. I mean, those ain't the worst cards, to be fair. From what I saw, I mean, there's an argument I could have had it 95-95 apiece. If you wanted to be generous, I mean, there's a very big argument that Steve Rolls could have potentially nicked a 6th round in there. Yeah, Berlanga just didn't do enough. Ultimately, he needs to improve on everything outside of his power punching. Like he needs to improve his jab, he needs to improve his ring IQ, he needs to improve his foot speed, he needs to improve his head movement. He did get off the line a couple times, that was impressive, but it wasn't enough. He needs to just improve his feinting, setting traps. Like his whole boxing brain has to evolve now, because the 1 round knockouts are done with. Like you haven't even stepped up to contender levels at this point, and you're getting found wanting. So yeah, we gotta work through that. But overall, look, it was a decent weekend. Like I said, it wasn't what we wanted it to be, but can only get better. I mean, next weekend is definitely going to be a lot better. I've got a lot that I'm going to have to do for that. But yeah, let me leave that there for now, and maybe there's 1 or 2 other topics I'll touch on before we wrap this up. Okay, so I was meant to address this in the last video and totally forgot. Also, time was running a bit low, so I decided I'd put in this one. Jermall Charlo. 2 things regarding Jermall Charlo. So the first thing is he has come out publicly and stated that Canelo Alvarez is not ducking him, and he supports what Canelo's doing, moving up to 175 to fight, you know, another champion, and saying it's something that he wishes he could do. Now, when I heard him say that, 2 things ran through my mind. The first thing, there's a bunch of channels on YouTube which come with a narrative that say that, oh, Canelo Alvarez, he ducks slick black fighters, or he just ducks black fighters, he doesn't like to fight black fighters, and more specifically, he's ducking Charlo to fight Bivol. So you're gonna duck someone that weighs 15 pounds less than the opponent that you're about to fight, who's got a lot more credible names on their record than he has, but somehow it's a duck. To go up in weight is a duck, rather than to go down in weight is to these people. Well, Charlo has just destroyed that narrative. So now the question is, what are you going to try and monetize your videos off of now? Because you can't use that one again. I mean, Charlo just came out of his own mouth, like, visually, you can see the visuals are there as well, so it's not like, oh, it could have been a duped recording. No, he's right there in the image, he's right there in the image talking about it. So yeah, to those people, I mean, like, time's up, innit? Like, you're gonna have to find something else to try and make your money off of, because it can't be that again. But the second thing about Jermall Charlo, and I didn't actually watch the interview on the Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson, but I've seen some of that, the excerpts of it. But he has confirmed that his next opponent, the Showtime schedule came out, and his next opponent is actually going to be Maciej Sulecki, who obviously Demetrius Andrade fought about, I think, 3 years ago, and Daniel Jacobs fought, I think, about 4 years ago. Now, it's funny because, Jacobs aside, when Demetrius Andrade fought him, he was, oh, this is just like another no-name Euro bum, quote unquote, that Andrade's fighting, and you know, he's not, you know, he hasn't got anyone good or credible on the record and whatnot. Now, that could be true. There, you might want to say there's a bunch of people on his record that ain't necessarily that great, but then you now have Jermall Charlo fighting that same guy that Andrade beat 3 years ago, like a 3-year worse version of that same opponent. I mean, are we keeping the same energy? You know, is it now going to be, oh, well, Jermall Charlo's fighting bombs and like his resume is trash, like he's not taking any decent step ups, he's not fighting any of the big guys? I mean, I want to know what these channels are going to be saying about that. That's what I was actually meaning to say this earlier on in the week, because to me that don't really make sense. Like, you can't fight a guy 3 years later that hasn't done anything significant to say, oh, like he's worthy of being back in the contendership status, so you're defending your title against. But the same guy who fought that guy 3 years ago, oh, he was a bum when he fought him. So is he a bum now that Charlo's fighting him? That's all I want to know, innit? That's, as long as we're keeping the same energy, I'll accept it. Actually, no, I won't accept it, because it's a fight that shouldn't be, he shouldn't be getting world title shots at this point. Like, he hasn't done anything to deserve that. So in that sense, it's a poor opponent. Regardless of what we want to talk about, whether the Mongia thing You know, that was obvious, that was clearly probably a golden boy issue, but regardless of what's happening there and whatever else, like, you let Andre leave the division to go up a weight because no one was willing to fight him. You haven't got Mongia. You've been begging for Golovkin, when realistically you could have probably fought Murata years ago, because I mean, you know, Rob Brandt fought him. You could have fought him around that time. Could have went to Japan and fought him. You would have made at least 3 times the amount of money you're making in America, if we're being real. You even could have fought Chris Eubank Jr. I'm not saying that would have been a great fight, but you know, that would have been at least a credible enough name. People know his name on both sides of the pond. All these people you could have fought, there was always excuses to not fight them. The Plant fight, all of us that, you know, Caleb Plant, now there's an excuse on that one. There was an excuse with the David Benavidez fight. All these excuses, and this is the opponent that we're getting. Like, I mean, unfortunately, look, Jermall Charlo's career is in the mud at this point, and it's going to be very hard to like pull it out of that. Like, he's going to have like 2 or 3 back-to-back like killer type fights or high profile fights moving forward to, you know, to get out of this funk, because right now stinks fully. But look, I'm gonna leave that there, because this ain't even a denigration of him. Like, it's just about the hypocrisy of some of the fan base. So like I said, all I want to know is the same energy being kept for his opponent that was for Andre 3 years ago? That's it. And yeah, if that happens, cool. All right, outside of this, I've got Femme Files Volume 2 going to be dropping on Wednesday. You might see me appear on Monday Night Smoke tomorrow. You'll definitely catch me on The Breakdown Tuesday, 8 p.m. live stream from the Undefeated podcast channel. So make sure you tune into that. First episode was a live one. And yeah, we will leave this one here for now. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. And as always, Hardcore Casual out.